Welcome, everyone. Can everyone hear me okay? Good, good. I'm glad you all could be here to honor Beth Foster, a beloved member and friend of this community. She was one of the first people I met when I first came to Youngstown in my ministry. And I remember that first winter, we had a bad blizzard on Martin Luther King Jr. weekend. And I had this stubborn idea that I would keep the church open that Sunday. And I remember Beth called me and commended me and said, "That hasn't happened since the 1960s. I know many of you have really wonderful stories that you're going to share this morning. You're welcome to use the mic down here, or the lectern, or the pulpit, whatever you're comfortable with. I have to say, I enjoyed every moment I spent with Beth Foster. Every single moment. She was warm to me, sharp, and funny. Thank you again for joining us as we honor a great life, well lived, the life of Beth Foster.
I wanted to say for quite a while. Beth was a very special person to me. We were next door neighbors for 40 years. I was so glad when she decided not to move after the passing of her husband, Bill. She really had no family in the area, but she had so many friends, plus her wonderful position at the main library in Youngstown for 41 years. As the years went by, we became closer. I was glad that I was available to her whenever needed. It was always my pleasure to make extra food, especially her desserts, and share them with Beth. We had a plan for years. If her bedroom shade didn't go up by at least 10 a.m., I had a key to get in her house. I checked that shade every day as her bedroom window faced my house. Unfortunately, one day it wasn't up. My husband, Richard, and I, and Martin Berger went in and found her on the floor. That was the day, the beginning of Beth's leaving her house and having major struggles. I feel fortunate to have had the best neighbor for so long. We always had great conversations every day at Park Vista. I learned so much about Beth's early years as a teacher in a one-room schoolhouse and her library career. Beth was a kind, soft-spoken, wonderful woman. She loved working outside in her yard. Her flowers were always beautiful. At age 90, I caught her washing her outside windows on a ladder. She left it outside, so I hid it so that she wouldn't do that again. I did finally give it back to her, but she never did get back on it. At Park Vista most days, you could find Beth and I, along with Jim Zupanik, playing a word game similar to Scrabble. At age 93, Beth always beat me at this game. She had a quick wit and a sharp mind. We discussed many books and authors. Beth was an avid writing correspondent. She loved writing letters to her family in Minnesota. We also wrote back and forth when she moved. There isn't a day that goes by as I look at her house on Todd Lane that I don't think of her. Beth, you are greatly missed.
In the past 40 years, Beth and I have crossed paths many times here at the church. In the 1980s, when I was the director of religious education, she played the piano for our children in their children's chapel time. She accompanied the adult choir, the Sometimes Sunday Singers, and I was in that choir then. And of course, she was always in the pews every Sunday. And as you recall, she always sat on this side toward the aisle. But it wasn't until recent years that we truly became friends. I knew that she was a dedicated public radio listener, of course, and I wondered if she also watched public television, like I do every Sunday evening. And while we chatted during coffee hour, I learned that, indeed, like me, Beth loved Masterpiece Theater, Call the Midwife, Downton Abbey, and all of those other PBS programs. So we bonded while discussing those shows. One Sunday morning, Beth asked if I would be willing to provide transportation for her to attend the upcoming performances of the Youngstown Symphony Orchestra. In exchange, Beth would purchase a season's ticket for me. I thought that her offer was way too generous, but she insisted, and so we went to every concert together that year, which was in fact the last year that she went to hear Youngstown Symphony Orchestra because she thought she had lost too much hearing by that point to really enjoy the concerts. And at those concerts, of course, we enjoyed the music, but the best part were our chats in her driveway before she got out of my car and into her house. We sat in my car together and talked about all sorts of things. Beth's childhood in Minnesota and what an avid reader she had been even from an early age, and how she played the tuba in high school and college band. And we talked about her coming to Youngstown alone as a young woman to work as a librarian and living in Beekner Hall as I had upon my own arrival to Youngstown. And she told me the story of how her beloved Bill found the historic and beautiful house on Todd Lane that became their home. And of course, Beth shared stories about her long membership here at our church. We were kind of like a young couple sitting in the driveway, hesitant for the evening to end, just getting to know each other. Beth was fun and funny, and as all of you know, brimming with wisdom and insight. Getting to know her then made me realize that I wish I had done so earlier.
not quite sure how this works. Oh, there we go. Can you hear me? Yeah. Hi, I'm Kathy, and I don't know if I'm going to get through this, but I was one of the ones later on that got to know Beth. She taught me bridge. There was a bridge group, Mary Ellen and Margaret and Beth. And when someone else had moved, they called. I was laid off from the hospital. This was end of 2012. And that's how I got to know Beth and the group, by learning to play bridge. And Beth was so patient and so particular. So I really learned well from her. You couldn't do. Same with when we didn't have enough to continue with the bridge group a couple years later, so we started Scrabble. And then we ended up trying Upwards when we were at Joan's house, and we all fell in love with the game Upwards. Well, that was it, and that was on her favorites list of things to do. But Beth was, like you were saying, she was full of conversation, rich in her experiences and her interest in anything. It was just wonderful. So, but she also liked to take drives. And like Karen did the music thing, I did drives. I'd call and say, well, which direction should we go? And one time it was White House Farms, and they had the parakeet collection there in the one house that they had for it. She was thrilled. She just loved birds and knew every bird that was in her yard all those years. But, and her excitement at just seeing those birds, and when they lit on her hands, and but different rides like that. Mill Creek Park, she loved going through Mill Creek Park. And same, instead of fireside chats, we had carside chats. And that was too when different things would come up, and wonderful ideas and remembrances. And one thing that we took to doing was, excuse me, when we would meet for Scrabble or Upwards, we'd also do remembrances. And she had written, I forgot my little write-out, she had written a list of her favorite things. The Color Red, Jane Austen books, Roses, the Upwards game, Bach, Brahms' German Requiem, Bill, all chocolate. No matter what was, all chocolate. Barbecue ribs were the best. Ice cream, her home, her record collection, German chocolate cake, strawberry rhubarb, Bill's first broadcast when she first heard him. And when she first heard him sing was in the choir, and she said, I heard his voice and I fell in love with him. And she was talking about his first broadcast that she had heard. She had some of Bill's recordings, so she treasured those. UUYO people. So this congregation was one of the important things in her life. The library, of course, the main library. Now, we always enjoyed meeting at the cafe area in the Poland library for various games with the group. And, she remembered and talked about retiring in 1995, and one of her favorite places was Great Britain, where Bill and she traveled many times. But anyhow, so I thank Beth for all the things she taught me, and her laughter and her humor was just priceless.
Hello. I'm Mary Ellen Schutz, and I can't remember how long ago it was that the first time I really met Beth was with the Some Sunday Singers at the Lowell and at the Satchery's house, and it was wonderful. And after a while, I began driving her to most of the games we'd play and different activities we'd have. But the really personal thing for me is that she come to my house for Christmas. And it was wonderful. My daughter would do the cooking, and I would set up everything around the house. Well, Beth would come a half hour early so she could sit in the kitchen and watch Megan at the stove like a maestro for an orchestra, just working away, and they'd gab as much as can be, and I would try and fix things all around them. But we had so much fun, and she was so interesting and so interested in everything Megan was doing too. It was just a wonderful experience. I also shared the games that we played, the Upward, but also the jigsaw puzzles. And I keep wondering if she ever put together the pizza jigsaw puzzle I gave her. She loved it, but I'm not sure she never told me if she finished it. So, but everything was so rewarding because she had so much information to share and also so many interests and that. So she just lived a life well, and she loved her family, and she grew up on a farm, and it was just wonderful to have her as a friend, and I just am going to miss her every day, but she's quite a reward to have had as a friend. And I'm not thinking of anything else right now, but there are so many things that I could say, I'm sure, but they're not coming to mind. So in any case, I won't take too much more time. So thank you.
I was 26 when I met Beth in 1970. I had started working at the Public Library of Youngstown in Mahoning County, and she was one of the supervisors. It was a time when women were held the sway in department heads of libraries, probably the only place in the only profession where women had so much power. And with power came intimidation. Not intentional intimidation, but I was terrified of Beth because she was so serious and so, she just seemed like a stern person. And the only time I got to know anything about her was at lunchtime when all of the librarians ate at the same table. But she never talked very much. And so it wasn't until I came to UUIO that I got to meet her and see the other side of Beth, the fun side, the funny side, the just amazing person that she was. She became so different when she was not at work. She had opinions on things, and her opinions were always delivered in a very determined format. Oh, Martin, time to get Al from the front. Sorry. She never minced her words. However, she was never unkind. She had the ability to let you know that she was unhappy with something, but not to make you feel small. And that is really a terrific thing to remember. And once we started playing Scrabble, when we started playing games when Joan Bushy was ill, we just got to see more and more of the fun Beth. And she did have the best stories. She was so knowledgeable about all kinds of things, and she was interested in absolutely everything. So she was a fount of knowledge and somebody that is to be aspired as a model. One of the things that we decided today was that we would have available downstairs the games that Beth enjoyed playing so much. So we've got an Upwards game and a Scrabble game, and if anybody wants to join in the fun, we can pretend that Beth is with us. Thank you.
This is one of Beth's favorite hymns. So you're welcome to rise in body or spirit for 115 in the Gray Hymnal. God of grace and God of glory, 115.
When my friend Melissa Smith and I set out on a walk from her home on Youngstown's north side, our favorite destination was Beth Foster's house 2 blocks away on Todd Lane. Amidst the flowers and trees, we would sit and enjoy a conversation with Beth. Occasionally, Beth would share a brief, treasured remembrance of her childhood in Minnesota. During the Great Depression, when life was difficult on the farm, but Beth's character grew strong and found joy. If her father happened to go into town on a Saturday night, he might stop for conversation around the local Cracker Barrel. When he returned, Beth and her brother and sisters would be in bed sometimes, but her mother would come and rouse them because her father had brought home store ice cream. They would scramble downstairs for a special treat together. When her father's repeated attempts to grow 2 shade trees in their backyard didn't take hold, he presented a still very young Beth with a challenge. He would plant them again, and if she would water them and could pull them through, he would give her a prize. She faithfully lugged the water and tended them to a self-sustaining state. Beth never mentioned what the prize was because she already knew, even then, that the real prize was the trees and the opportunity for her to give this gift to her family. Throughout her life, Beth gave the gift of her music to many people. In her last summer in Youngstown, Beth was still planting things. She had carefully prepared flower boxes for plants in her front yard, wide, deep boxes with water troughs and filled with rich soil. Mulch fabric covered the specified quantity and type of fertilizer. Plants chosen for the planned sun exposure were set down through slits in the fabric at well-planned spacings. Over my shoulder, Beth spoke. "Okay, little plants, I've done everything I can for you. You're on your own now." Apparently they listened. As we came by that summer, they grew into state fair quality specimens. As Beth got close to moving last year, moving back to Minnesota, to the banks of the Red River, the north, she would mention individuals and how much they meant to her and how they had been a comfort and support to her. And that also goes for you people in Minnesota. Minnesota sent a member of their A team to Ohio. Thank you.
As we depart, may we keep the memory of Beth Foster alive in our heart and mind always. May her love and attention live on through us. Please join us for a reception immediately following this service for delicious desserts and games and more Beth stories. Thank you again for being with us.